Welcome back. Jay Subito, in to participate in possibly the worst draw in our club's history, a 0-0 tied at Como, where we produced a total of .06 XG. What a barn burner. I'm your host, Andrew. I've got Jay here with me, and we're just going to pretend that match never happened. We're not going to talk about Como. Jay, what's up?
On the contrary, I am going to very briefly talk about Como, but only to say that it was a success in the worst way possible. We left the Como Arena, I don't actually know what the stadium's called, with a clean sheet and a valuable draw to take into the second leg. I think Como will be kicking themselves a little bit for not forcing the issue more. I mean, we were uninterested in playing football, so they could have potentially pushed a bit harder and maybe gotten a goal. Lord knows they came extremely close with that absurd miss from right in front of goal. One of their players had, I believe it was a left back. The name escapes me. But ultimately, a highly successful night for us. We went there with the intention of rotating heavily, resting players, and trying to basically shit our way to our 0-0 result without expending any energy or without getting any injuries, and that's exactly what we did. So, yeah, 0.06 XG was just dismal to watch, and I feel bad for anyone who tuned in, let alone attended the match in person. But like I said, it was a successful night, I guess.
Yeah. Let's get into the good stuff. So, you all know the drill by now. During our Scudetto season, riding high, six consecutive wins over Milan, including 2 in the Champions League. We were invincible. It was never going to come to an end. But oh, how the tables have turned. We're winless in our last 6 against Milan, including 4 losses. We've been tortured by the likes of Fonseca, Conceição, Allegri. And during the run, we've given up 3 goals to the greatest soccer player ever, Pulisic. There was a Gabby, late winner. You had braces from Tammy Abraham, Jovic, Rainers, Theo. They're all gone now, but all these guys scored against us in this string of 6 consecutive dropped points against Milan. And we've dropped points in every way imaginable. We've been up 2-0 only to blow it and lose 3-2 in the dying moments. We've had Hakan miss a penalty in the latest edition. And then we took that 3-0 smacking in the Coppa last year. So we're running out of ways to drop points to these imbeciles. I bring up all these scars of the Derby's past to ask you, Jay, what will be different this time? We finally won the big one. We beat Juve. But does this group of players have a Milan Derby win in them? If we get 3 points here, the Scudetto race is ours. But if we lose, momentum gone, Milan will feel as if they're right back in this, sitting 7 points behind us. It's kind of do or die. So how are you feeling?
Do the players have the do they have it in them to win the derby? That's the question you asked, and to be completely honest with you, I don't know, and I don't really think so. I mean, we talk about this frequently because we've had such a large sample size of this exact instance where there's a big opponent or a big game and Inter has just melted. They've just failed to show up on the big occasion when the stadium lights are shining their brightest and the pressure is on and the expectation is on. And the team has repeatedly failed to impress. You know, you mentioned the Juventus game, but we barely scraped over the line there, courtesy of a late winner, which was a shot from long distance, and having played something like 50 or 60 minutes against 10 men in our home stadium. So the the evidence is there that this team really struggles when the pressure and expectation is on. And not to go back to all this, but I still genuinely believe this team is mentally broken from the collapse of last season. The losing the Coppa Italia to Milan, yeah, that's one thing, and getting bounced in like a 3-0 second leg is one thing again. Losing the Scudetto the way we did is another level of disappointment. but losing the Champions League final in the way that we did, with all the controversy around Inzaghi and the departure and the weirdness of having no fans and just the overall shit way to lose, I really feel is playing a massive part, weighing down on the mentality of these players and the performance anxiety they're getting. I feel like they're really relieved when they play against the smaller sides, and that's why we are so comfortable in dismantling them. I believe that in the, I think, 15 games since we played Milan, I think we've drawn once and won the remaining 14, if I'm not mistaken. I think Milan was our last loss in the league, and other than the one draw against Napoli, we won them all. Yes, as mentioned, the Juve game is included among those wins, but by and large, the wins have been fairly regulation. Like I said, we deserve credit for those games because this is how a league title is won, through consistency. But to win these big standalone games, I still haven't seen enough empirical evidence to believe that this team can do it. I mentioned the other week that the Bodo Glimt game was the perfect test because it was like a tailor-made test for us to overcome. On one hand, you do have a 2-goal deficit, and you have the pressure of a Champions League knockout fixture. Is it even a knockout fixture if it's a playoff? So I still can't tell whether we made it out of the group or whether we count this like a group stage exit. But in any instance, yeah, you have the big occasion of this Champions League elimination game, and yet that pressure is really reined in or kind of neutralized by the fact that it's against such a manageable opponent in a Norwegian team. And yet we still just absolutely fucking failed to show up. We absolutely caved, capitulated under the pressure, and it showed with an absolutely dismal performance. It was even worse than the first leg, like we discussed. And so that's the most recent example I have of this team's ability to showcase their abilities in a big game. So to answer your question, no, I don't believe that the team has shown that they can win the derby. However, however, 7 points is big, even by my standards. And when I say 7 points, I mean like obviously the gap between us should we lose this game. If this was a 5 point game or a 6 point game and then we lost and then and then the gap got reduced to 3 points, I'd be legitimately nervous. But seven, even I'm relatively confident that even if we lose this game, we'll just continue to do what we do, which is dust ourselves off and probably avoid some difficult internal conversations, avoid some difficult soul searching, avoid that difficult confrontation with the mirror, but instead kind of just smooth over it, go to the next game and just pick up where we left off by beating the smaller teams.
You know the expression styles make fights? Well, it's just funny because when you play Allegri, it's just two drastically different styles of football. And we talk about formations not mattering. Well, here's two teams that play the 3-5-2, and they could not be more different. In the league this season, we've attempted 193 more crosses than Milan, and Magnan has made 23 more saves than Summer, which I think those two stats give you a great understanding of how different these teams play. It is us trying to take initiative and break down teams who are sitting deep, and it's Milan more than willing to concede pressure, concede opportunities, and let Magnan pull a rabbit out of his hats, whereas we can't do that with Summer or we lose. And this Milan side is going to want to sit deep. That's exactly what they did to us in the first game of the season. They wanted to counter us, and when they had the chance, they pounced. So we had all the possession, we had all the shots, but all it took was one breakaway from Milan to catch us out and Pulisic to score the winner. And if we're going to try and play Kivu ball again today, I'm worried that the same thing is going to happen again. And I guess the one big difference is that we're starting Bisek and Akanji in defense here, or at least I assume we will. Last time we started a Cherby, our record with a Cherby in matches this season is horrible, and he was definitely caught out on the counter that we ended up conceding that bounced off of Summer's hands. So, what do you often talk about Leao like picking up the ball in his own half and dribbling it down into the opponent's box and scoring ridiculous goals. That's basically how we lost last time with a Pulisic counter. So what's your fear level? What do we do? Will this, this faster backline we're featuring against Milan for the first time make a difference in this match?
I'm not entirely sure whether the speed of the backline is going to play like some particularly definitive factor in this game because the defense has proven to be porous, regardless of the fact that it's faster. And you've seen this in the goals we conceded against Bodo Glimt, in particular, Juventus too. This I don't think this team defends as well as a unit as it used to in important spots. And I don't know if it's Inzaghi and Kivu, both of them being largely, uh, offense-minded coaches. Although, having said that, Inzaghi's Champions League defense was incredible last season, right up until right up until the final. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be as much grinta, as much desperation, as much last-ditch defending that we have wanted to see or that we expect to see from an into defense. I mean, Kibu himself was a core part of that defense under Mourinho. You'd expect or hope at least that he can transmit some of that to his players as a coach. But the defense has been lackluster the entire season. It's been lacking heart. It's been lacking desire. You don't see these players throwing themselves at the ball like Bodo Glimt players did. A two-legged tie against them. It's just been very, very soft, I feel, and part of that is the makeup of the players. I don't consider any of our defenders other than other than a Cherby to be very much of a hard man. The next closest one is Akanji, and don't get me wrong, like a hard man himself does not make a brilliant defender. Just see someone like Pavlovic from Milan. That guy's as much of a hard man as he is, he's 80% retard as well. Or like Lissandro, quote unquote, the butcher Martinez from Man United. That guy fucking sucks. I don't care what any Man United says to defend him. That guy's shit. But you get my point. Just being tough and rough doesn't immediately equate to being a good defender. But there's at least a desire there, a, a unwillingness to give in, a kind of personal grudge against the striker, not to be beaten in one-on-one duels, not to be bested in contesting aerial balls. But that's been really prominently absent, I think, from our defense this this season in particular. Teams like Bodo Glimt have just fairly easily passed their way through us with minimal resistance. There's no one hurling themselves in front of a shot to block it. There's no one making physical tackles on attackers to prevent them from gaining territory. It's just all very stagnant, all very soft. Like I complained about in the I think it was it the Juventus game or maybe it was the game before, but I hated watching these guys like go into challenges while holding their hands up to say, "Oh, ref, I'm not doing anything. I'm not fouling them. Don't blow the whistle." Like, stop being such pussies. Just get in there, make a challenge, commit a foul if you have to. I don't care. But what is this like reluctant, like apologetic defending that we're seeing? And again, my favorite target is of course Bastoni, but I'm sick of this apologetic kind of reluctant defending we do, and that's a long-winded way of addressing a question. But I don't think the pace of our defense is going to be or lack of pace of our defense is going to be a problem, nor do I think the increased pace of playing Bisek and Akanji is going to be that much of a solution to Milan's attack. I think it's all about desire. I think it's all about effort and wanting to defend, which is going to make the difference. And like I said, sadly, I don't or I haven't seen that from the team much this season.
I have to say, I don't respect this Milan attack. So I'm talking about Pulisic, who's been very inefficient this year, and Leao, as if I'm afraid of them. But Pulisic has very barely played this season due to injuries, and he's not nearly as clinical as he always looks against us. They brought in Fulkrug, and he's been super useful to them as the focal point of the attack. But let's be real. Should I really sit here and fear the guy when they're not going to bring him in until the 65th minute? He's a super sub. This game is going to be all about containing the likes of Pulisic, Leao, and Salamakers on the counter.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Pulisic and Liao have, I think, 8 and 9 league goals respectively, so they're not doing too badly, especially considering that neither of them are out and out strikers, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree with that. The counter is always a risk for us. I think those fast vertical balls can really hurt us. We know that the backline, the wing backs will often be further up the pitch attacking, and while Luis Enrique's pace in particular has proven a useful tool for recovering space when we need to scamper back. But like I said, you can try and rein in or control the damage that a team can cause on the counter by rapidly retreating. But at some point, push comes to shove, and after Liao or someone is has made up those 20, 30, 40 meters on the counter, they're going to eventually get to a spot where they have to pass or take on a man and shoot, or otherwise somehow create an opportunity for an attack. You can't just counter attack 40 meters and then stop and pass backwards. That's like some Dumfries or Darmian shit, right? These guys are going to turn that counter attack into a shot if they can. And that's when I think the kind of big game nature of some of these players really comes to the fore. And I'm not just talking about Liao and Pulisic, for example, and the way that they've been able to pull it out in big spots. I'm talking about our players and how they haven't been able to pull it out in big spots. I'm talking about when Liao goes for that, dropping the shoulder and cutting in from the left. Is Bissek going to be mad enough to stick out a leg and anticipate it with clarity and determination and win the ball? Or is he going to, just hold his hands up and kind of half heartedly scan the area and let Liao just skim past him? This is more important to me than any, counter-attacking pose that a threat that Milan pose.
And I really think it's time for Thuram to wake up. He has a good goal scoring record against Milan. He'll be starting up top with Pio, and it's kind of now or never for him. We need this guy to come through for us. He he has had numerous big games. You all remember his curler in his debut, but this is a team he scores against. This is a team he does well against, and we need him to come through for us.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I'm alone in saying that Thuram has been especially disappointing. Obviously, not just since his return from injury, but since Lautaro's been injured. We needed him to step up as like the leader of the attack, and instead he's seemingly gone worse somehow now that his strike partner is out as well. That's disappointing. I think that's like a far more of a mentality thing than it is a tactic thing, or lacking his usual body to play off and not being as tactically familiar with Pio or Bonnie as he is with Lautaro. Those are fair points to make, but I don't think it contributes or attributes to this level of poor form that we're seeing from Thuram. And so I agree completely. He needs to wake up. Sadly, I don't. I mean, we saw his reaction against Bodo Glimt. He looked devastated. He looked like he was about to cry, but then follows it up with the stinkers that he did. Like, well, fuck, what do you want then? Like, put that anguish on your face into actions and actually put some fire on the pitch. But again, like, look, my stance with this team and all the players in it and all the issues in the team and club as a whole are my approach is the same to each and every one of them, which is I am genuinely hopeful and I wish and I long for change and improvement, but I'm just not convinced by the evidence I've seen yet. I feel like there needs to be a turning point, and by and large, I'm not someone who believes in miracles where a turning point happens just like that, and then someone goes from being shit to being great and suddenly carrying us through Champions League quarterfinal games. I don't believe that really. I believe that progress happens incrementally and steadily, and you see this in players like Zielinski. Zielinski didn't just turn into a match winner overnight. He was eased into the role following, or mainly through Kivu's selection, but also following Chalhanoglu's injury. And he has improved and improved game and game and game after being given repeated starts, after being given repeated full games of 90 minutes or thereabouts. Now he's a undisputable starter in our lineup currently, one of the first names on the team sheet. And that's down to that incremental improvement I was talking about. Even like Luis Enrique, although his rate of improvement and the the amount of improvement he's covered is still much lower than Zielinski, he still improved game by game as well. And that's, again, fortuitously from Denzel Dumfries' injury and Luis Enrique claiming that, or being trusted with that starting right back spot. Oh, also coinciding with Damian's injury. I completely forgot about that. But yeah, I mentioned in previous episodes how like Luis Enrique seems to improve at a rate of zero point 0.1 per game. So his average performance levels have gone from 5 out of 10 to 5.1 to 5.2 to 5.3 to 5.4 and so on and so forth. Now he's averaging a good 6.8 out of 10, which I'm pretty happy with. But it's taken him a long while, is my point. So that's my semi-optimistic view on all these guys and all the problems, wider problems in the team. But to talk about Taram specifically, I haven't seen that incremental improvement to show that he's kind of slowly getting over his injury and his slump in form. I wanted to see signs of life, and I've been looking out for them, but uh, I'd be lying if I said I'd seen them. And I'm really not trying to be negative, but I'm still looking. I'm still looking. I'm still searching, and but hopefully, he can take a big step forward. Even though, like I said, I don't believe in sudden miracles. Maybe he can pull a rabbit out of the hat or do something. Or take a stride in the right direction.
All right. Let's do some predictions. I'm going to go ahead and predict a 1-1 draw. I want to be the optimist. I want to be the guy who thinks we get this done, but there's just something stylistically here that's not quite working for me. That has me scared. I just need to see it to believe it at this point with this team, with this group of players, and there should be more pressure on Milan, given we're 10 points up in the table, but it just feels like all the pressure is on us to like prove ourselves, especially after what happened against Juve. So I'm just not sure this group of players is up for the task. So give me a 1-1 draw. Thuram will get his goal, and of course, it has to be Pulisic who scores. I mean, who else could it really be?
It could be Rabiot, the leading midfielder in Serie A, the undisputed best CM in the league. It pains me to say that I'm not really joking with that, because Barella's been rubbish this season. But I seem to recall Barella not doing well against Rabiot whenever he came up against him while Rabiot was at Juve. So anyway, let's not go there. I'm very unfortunately predicting another loss here. I'm going to go with 3-1. I feel like there is still that mental hang up that I mentioned before, and exactly like you said, I I need to see it to believe it, and I haven't seen enough to believe yet. Maybe my threshold for believing is higher than most people, hence me being considered more of a pessimist than an optimist. But I just need more evidence. And like I said earlier, I haven't seen much of it. So the way I think this is going to go is that I think it's going to go the exact same way as the Bodo game. I think we'll start encouragingly, and we'll take control of the ball and pass it around, and we'll float some crosses in, and we'll probably win some headers and get some headers goalwards, but they won't be like threatening headers. They'll be like the kind of uncontrolled over the crossbar type headers that we saw against Bodo Glimt from Pio and Turam and whoever, on the corners. I feel like that's going to be the bulk of our game. We'll apply a relatively manageable level of pressure against Milan, and then at some point Milan will just grab the ball, kind of venture forward, and pretty easily piece together a move to break our defense. And from there, I think it's really fucking downhill. I really think the moment they score, it's mentally all over for us. Again, I don't want to end, or I hate to end on a negative note, but I really think the the fantastic results against the smaller sides and the fact that we're doing so well in terms of points has really kind of glossed over the crippling mentality issues in this squad. I don't think this is a sustainable kind of way forward, right? Just to beat all the shitters and then crumble at any sign of adversity against the equal sized or bigger sized opponent or occasion for that matter, because Lord knows Bodo Glimt are not equal on size or stature with us. But the occasion was too big for us. Anyway, I don't think that's a sustainable thing. So I think there's going to be there needs to be a lot of tough decisions made at the end of the season. I think there needs to be a lot of people who look in the mirror and kind of do some soul searching and get their heads sorted out. I think the management in Marotta needs to make some pretty tough decisions in terms of sacrifices. And I think we need to incrementally rebuild the mentality by bringing in the right players and offloading some of those who are perhaps detrimental. So that's a bit of a more of a deeper future prediction. But as far as this game goes, I am predicting a loss. But to end on a glimmer of hope, I do think we'll probably still win the league.
All right, we'll wrap up there. Catch you all next time. We'll be back post Derby for the recap, hopefully celebrating an impending Scudetto. Until then, Jay, please do the honor.
Let's go, boys. Enough is enough, seriously. It's time to fucking grow up. It's time to just snap out of it. Do it for yourselves. Do it for the pride of the city. Do it to avenge the last 6 derbies. Do it for the Ayatollah. I don't care. Just get it fucking done, please. And so we say, Forza Inter.